Alrighty. This is gonna be the tale of an underdog, the tale of failures and lessons, the origin story of Flow, a little more about who I am. We've kind of understood at this point, I feel like, that I get on roofs and I teach others the standards of roofing that are on my team, and other clients that want to know more about the lessons, the understanding of what it's like to see into a roof from the inside out. And we ain't gonna hold back, okay? So I have traditionally, if you're in the office or the shop and you're on my team, you're gonna feel the fire. And it could be a perfectly harmless little lesson. It could just be how I ask for your help. But you're gonna feel it because the feels are so incredibly important. Now, Jocko may say something like, not controlling your emotions is weakness, as a lot of us do understand, but that doesn't mean you can't necessarily approach a conversation with respect, in that if you're completely present, as my mom would say, then embodying the emotions around what you feel and how you think is the only way to truly be 100% authentically who you are. And that's how I approach what we could quote term as sales. But I'm not able to do that necessarily with all the conversations I have on the day-to-day with my team. On the inside, on the backside of Flow, we're piping up. We're going to make sure that also the team understands they should explore the real tones of their voice. And I'll invite people to like say, well, hey, we're going to find your voice. And whether that's yelling across the hall or like out to the shop, like the filter that society is put on individuals is unbearable. The constant judgment around, what people are most afraid of, I feel like, is acceptance. But in business is being accepting to everyone, which is impossible, right? Like, you're never gonna please everyone, okay? And maybe I'm not giving you the right vibes, even in this video, but that's okay, right? Because it would be a disservice to you or anyone else that I do business with that you would get anything other than the authenticity that I try to bring to the table every single fucking day, okay? And why do I choose to push record and share this perspective? Is because I fucking hate the bullshit, and I didn't build this opportunity machine to hide what we do, how we do it, who I am, what we are, how we approach everything, okay? Now, I will say, there was part of me, and I was talking to Dmitry Lipinski like a month ago or so, we had a video chat, and I had this pipe dream of a thought around maybe someday, we'll cross the $10 million mark, and then I'll share with people how we approach roofing, which I'm glad I said it on the call, because I was hearing myself and I was like, it's not impossible, right? But, at this point in time, wouldn't it be better off, and he didn't even say this, but I was thinking, like, wouldn't it be better off to share the story of how we get there, right? And so that's where we're at, I guess. And so we would have to roll back the clock a little bit in order to be able to start at the true origin. So what we're doing here is we're giving this more, it's more of a vlog vibe, right? But as I'm sitting here before it's 9 o'clock on a Sunday, going through risk assessment onboarding procedure for a firm that is going to allow us to partner with Home Depots, Walmarts, Amazon warehouses, Costco's, and it's all about safety, risk assessment, mitigation of risk always. So putting in all of our documentation in there. I even see holes in the documentation that they want for all the SOPs that would make sure that they know when we come on site, we're going to be as safe as hell. So that all is super boring. We're here to tell you guys the story, okay? So once upon a time, a guy grew up on the Oregon coast down in a little town called Florence and did his K through 12 in a little old raining town where a kid could thrive in the way that if you were more recreational, outdoor focused minded, you would have the fucking time of your life. There's 25 lakes, 3 different rivers, an ocean, a couple different national forests. And so my neighbors were probably more hunter-gatherer focused. I think the majority of their food was never bought at a grocery store. So we would always go out on the boat, go out into the forest. I never hunted. I've still never shot anything, but I was always with them. And, a typical weekend in the summertime when there's no school involved probably is going to be somewhere, like spring run or something. I mean, we would go soak the pots on the way out of the river mouth, go and limit the salmon, come back, pull the pots, load it up, get the boilers running, boil the crab, throw your garlic, your herbs, your spices in there, fillet the salmon, come back, crack the crab, cook the salmon, and be feasting. And you could do this twice a weekend, right? And so I got a great understanding for this balance and a perspective around like a connection to how the earth can provide in a way that I think a lot of people don't even get to experience. Now, I'll say that I still haven't done so much, we would smoke the elk jerky, we would fillet the deers, and I've been around the real richest meats, I feel like, that the earth can provide. And I feel like the appreciation for a balanced system that helps nurture the amount of resources that we can take off the planet. And so after high school, there was this consideration around going to the University of Oregon, but then it really switched when I found out that Oregon State was such a hard science university. And, we in Oregon, in University of Oregon, I feel like had, Uncle Phil's endowment that helped bolster everything. There's probably a balance around what he contributes at Oregon State, but there's some sort of private fund for the guy that went to the college and started the company, right? And so Uncle Phil being Nike, right? So cool. We're going into a biology program at Oregon State. Freshman year, moving out of the fam. No one around to tell you what to do. You're in the dorms. Shit gets a little reckless, right? But you don't know that your decision making in the beginning is going to affect anything else later on in life. You're just stoked that you can call your own shots and you have the most freedom you ever thought you would need. And in hindsight, you never realize in those years that those are the best years in terms of measuring responsibility to satisfaction level, like the least amount of responsibility anyone will ever have almost, versus like maximizing satisfaction for the lifestyle, I guess, which is being a student, really. And but there was a lull in my second sophomore junior year where I'd done stayed at for one summer, and I took a calculus class my sophomore summer because I didn't pass, maybe even multiple times. I think I tried taking like 3 or 4 times. I was like fucking blowing my head through the wall trying to figure out the stupid everything that was going on in calculus. And so I think I finally committed, and ultimately I feel like it came down to the instructor. I knew that, like, after having taken algebra and having gone into being a teaching assistant with the college algebra program, like, my professor in that class made it so clear and easy to understand. I attribute all of my success in that mathematics course to Duran Coles. And that way, I mean, he's an awesome engineer. The calculus, though, did not stick. And it took me multiple goes, told, hey, Duran, try to help me. And it got messy in the way that I felt like, third time going in, you don't give up, first off, right? But it took a summer of dedicated focus, no other courses, nothing else, but just rigorous determination to finally pull off, like, probably a B- or a C+. We're going to pause this real quick. Okay. So, second cup of coffee, it's going to get dangerous. Garrett came in, he's our weekend project manager, and he comes from an engineering background, and the intent with him is to get him on spec with all these larger projects. He's used to reading specs, which is why I hired him, but to apply it to the field in real life means additional training. So I forgot where we left off there, but I was letting him know I'm going to need help with him getting some additional documentation prepared for a very thick, I think probably 400 plus page spec that's coming up here this summer, and to make sure that he's the guy who has all of that under wraps, mainly for the relationship of the consultants involved. And so before that, though, I'd forgotten where we were touching base on the origin story. We talked a little bit about Florence, then going to Oregon State, having all those freedoms. And I feel like maybe going into my sophomore summer there, the reason why I might have been failing a little bit, granted I'd already gone into and taken a significant amount of prereqs, was that I think maybe there was too much freedom in the way that I wasn't holding myself accountable. So I was a B average student. I wasn't really thinking, like, what do I want to do? What do I want to be? I was just kind of just going along for the ride. And the discipline that I needed, I found in sports. And so rowing. In high school, I'd done football, basketball, golf, and I did track the last year. The football the last year too, because I knew about CTE, and I was like, these guys going out there and slamming heads. So I was in jazz band. I was playing trombone. I'll cheer you on, dudes. Like, go ahead and, like, smash your faces against each other. Like, that shit's gnarly. I remember the senior year I did play football. This gnarly 2 brothers, Samoan brothers, came in to the school, and they were freshmen, but they came in freshmen almost like over 200 plus pounds each. everyone was like, holy shit, the Tapuas, though. And they were this big thing. And they went on, they won a state champ, but they were sophomores when I was seniors, I think. And Sonny just fucking thick in the neck. This guy, he must have been 220 plus. Coaches ran through a drill, and I can't remember. We were just wearing pads and helmets, but I was like filling in for an injured D end, Ryan, and I had to show someone I could fucking hold it down. And so, for whatever reason, though, Sonny gets a breakaway. I'm coming through, and someone's got to try to stop him. I'm probably only like $170 at the time, maybe. And we go helmet to helmet, and we drop, which was surprising because he could have easily plowed right through me. And they said that I walked into the showers with my clothes on after that. And so I was like, I understand now what can happen. So football is kind of like obviously a classic Americana and everything. I'm more aligned with rugby. I love following the All Blacks in New Zealand. We'll get to that as well. But wow, fuck that. Head injuries, right? Like, I'm not a doctor, but and I think there's a lot of research behind amyloid beta plaques with regards to like Alzheimer's now, more contributed to with poor diet and sugar and everything. But like that one hit, oh man, I can still hear it crack. Oh gosh. So college sport was super important. I was still working out all the time, but the discipline really came when I joined up I was doing some dancing classes. I was doing a couple other things for just activity style. I can't be doing academics all the time. And I joined a rowing class for whatever reason. And it turned out to be, I didn't even know, but it was a recruiting method that the coaches had used. And so they started to take in a liking to me, maybe more because of my height, not necessarily because of my performance, but because I was aggressive enough in the numbers. They said, hey, it'd be worthwhile for you to consider jumping into the boats. And so I naturally, having loved being around water, being with water, on water boats, have always been a part. We had tiny little, not Chris Crafts, but like tiny little, 35 horsepower Evinrudes or something on the back of boats growing up. We were never well off by any means. Shit, my dad learned the hard way, but what's ironic, he would put tarps on flat roofs. You can't tarp a flat roof, right? And I remember like it was yesterday, and it's like there's a foggy filter on it, but there were multiple different colored tarps on our flat roof, and leaks all the time, and all the different things that come with a dad who is trying to raise his kids the way he wanted to, away from the city. Pulled us out of Southern California and did the best that he could, and I commend him for all that he was able to provide, and the lessons, and being a role model for hard, gritty work. And he eventually would take a second job and jump into real estate, and that's what he still does today. But the idea was that, he told me growing up, though, that, small business owners are the backbone and the wealthiest class of people in America. And if there was one thing I remembered out of that conversation, it was that. And he had gotten taken out by the 2008 housing issue by being over leveraged, and has since rebuilt incredibly, and he says, be retiring pretty soon. Congrats, Pops. But I look to his path as more of a lesson of what I don't want to fall into, which we'll talk about later. So the overall approach of rowing, what I was able to do was, my coach, Gabe Winkler, was, his energy levels are, I can still hear him fucking yelling and getting after us for being comfortable with leaving it all on the water. And they say all on the court. On the court is relatively less intense than all out on a cardiovascularly focused race. All out in racing is maximum VO2 max times 10 balanced with like not passing out, right? Being functionally able to control the output. So the maximum output in a race, a linear race, is a balance of speed, lactic acid, CO2, like metabolic control. Whereas all out on the court, there can be an intensity on how fast you run, but there's still a balance of like making a play, being aware situationally of the court and where your dudes are, versus all out in a race is you don't have anything else physically you can give because you're going as hard as you fucking can. And he tells these stories because he'd raced with those two twins from that Facebook movie, and how they had like superimposed their faces for the movie onto the models to be able to like do the movie. And they were like flying back and forth during races, I guess, to be able to have that happen. But that movie, at least, Gabe knows when someone is at that limit versus someone who's not hitting their full potential. And so it's interesting to see guys in your boat, on your team, around you, who give up to that will of and jump into the comfortable mindset of being uncomfortable in body, which in body discomfort in rowing when you're in a 2K race, which you're trying to hit sub 6 minutes when you're at the highest level. And like your splits for like a single racer might be between like 6:30 or 6 minutes flat, depending. There's a couple dudes that they're like 6'10" freaks that can just pull because their height naturally allows them to keep a higher torque on the string longer when you're on the erg. And so the those guys rowing in the boat, still keep in contact with some of them. Not all of them. Some of them have dropped off. There've been stories about some dudes hitting, like missing. It's just, there's been life that's happened since then. Now I'm 33. Gee, Merry Christmas. Graduated 10 years ago, you guys. This is crazy. 33. In 2015, and it's 2025. And we were walking in about a month. It's 5/11/2025. It's going to be about a month away from being 10 years from walking, which was awesome. I remember everyone is in line and there's this weird energy. Like everyone's excited, but they're also like nervous because there's people yelling at you to stay in line and stay in a row, like alphabet. I don't know how they did it, but there's tens of thousands of students. It felt like we're all walking. And so eventually we started chants just going, "Oh, as you," and beyond just being overly stoked on the fact that that it was going to be done, and the accomplishment, the feeling of having done what at the time felt like the most monumental achievement in my life. And so you kind of burst out with that type of energy. At least I did. So The ceremony was obviously almost 90 degrees. It was super hot, beautiful, but what a weird system higher education is, right? To create individuals that are higher level employees, right? And so I got to kind of watch where I'm talking about, right? Because I want to join and be a bigger part of the Oregon State Alumni Association and try to figure out a way to give back to the community. I feel like that really set the standard for how I would approach life afterwards. And so that buyout, that after the rowing though, I only did it for a year. I mean, it sounds like I did this whole big old thing, but I went to nationals after Pac-12s, and they put me in a 4 with a couple other guys, and they given us a lighter boat. And there was one race, we'll have to find the video at some point. It was a race to go to the final heat, and we weren't even in first. We were like in 4th with a couple other schools and battling for that 3rd place spot to be able to go to the finals, which was an accomplishment for nationals just to be representing it. And I think at that point too, we got smoked. And so in our heat, Oregon State begins a move, and you can see it's just our stroke rate goes from 30s into the 40s and up, and we just start pumping and pulling away. Like it seems like we could have gone and done that earlier and been better off maybe. And if we would have hit a higher stroke rate, we could have been in that contender spot for the first, 3rd spot. But we increased the stroke rate, we qualified for 3rd, we go to finals. We didn't make it after that. It was still fun, right, to be in a 4 like that. But so a year of rowing and balancing student athletics with academics actually gave me more discipline. I was a better student in those years because of rowing, having the fine-tuned balance of 2 workouts a day, and understanding at the time. I think I only took 3 courses. It was the last bit of calculus, anatomy, biochem, and then I think I started to dabble with toxicology, because I was looking at that as like a master's program I want to dabble with. And then also being a teaching assistant in the laboratory for the anatomy, the cadaver labs at the time. For the first 2, it was like muscles and bones. I didn't ever get to the organs side of things, but nerves as well. Because I was trying to create this resume that I thought at the time would be attractive for like a dental program, or and I know I didn't want to do medicine, but my roommate James went on to be a dentist, do this OHSU residency, and his dad had buddies in the offices that helped him get into the school, and he knew like the dean and all that stuff. So I knew that he had a different track than a guy otherwise who had all of the chips stacked against him, who really had to stand out academically, both in experience. And so I thought, I'll start volunteering, I'll be in the cadaver labs, I'll start looking at the different research opportunities. And so to fill in for athletics, I went and joined the College of Veterinary Medicine through a professor to join his research laboratory, because I'd found out he was working on some circadian rhythm focused molecular chemistry. And within the first couple months, I got connected with him through Devin Quick, the anatomy professor at the time. And cheers, Devin, you're an amazing individual. Devin had said, you should go talk to Pat Chappelle, and met Pat, and he was some whacked out veterinary. Everyone knew Dr. Chappelle. He was, and probably still is, like one of the more brilliant minds, but 2 pots of coffee kind of day, multiple packs of cigarettes, just so, when I don't think he's relying on it, but when you're that addicted to those substances, you have, I can't imagine what he's like without those things, right? And so he probably kept on doing it because he was worried that maybe if we didn't, he probably tried too, that he was going to be less of the professor that everyone knew him to be, which was this crazy, he was next to some of the other labs that were getting the massive grants. And so his objective was to try to reverse engineer the female contraceptive pathway by understanding circadian rhythm so that he could affect clock proteins in the way where he was trying to go after a $20 million opportunity for making a male contraceptive by reverse engineering and understanding everything that has to do with the female contraceptive with relations to the clock protein to help lead into understandings more around circadian rhythm, blue light blockers and stuff. He wasn't directly, I think blue light was already understood to have affected clock proteins for circadian rhythm in that time, and that's where I started diving into understanding a lot of Dr. Rhonda Patrick's work with and that led into Andrew Huberman's studies as well before he blew up around making sure that I could actually wrap my head around. Those only ways I could really understand the pathways was by applying it to those guys' podcasts, which I found out through Tim Ferriss's stuff. That's where I found Huberman and Patrick, Dr. Rhonda Patrick. And so it was kind of cool. I felt like the part of the scientific community at the time, but I knew that I had limitations in my own mental capacity to understand completely the different biomechanical pathways responsible for everything relating and wrapping around vitamin D and serotonin, oxytocin, and the pathways for the different cycles. And I was just like, well, maybe I'm not the best suited to be in medicine. And so I'd done that for a year, and Patrick was amazing and given me the opportunity to try to figure out if I was gonna be in that industry. And I still think about it a lot, but at the same time, like if there's any reason that I have a better understanding for an appreciation for detail or standards whatsoever, is because of Patrick Chappelle, which was given to me from all my other experiences prior, and where Pat really gave me the opportunity to kind of thrive. And what I found to be my strong suit was when he told me to go and take this room of old 80s equipment that was decommissioned and probably going to be thrown away. He could have knew about that equipment because he'd actually used it back in the day, actually. But all fucking analog, basically. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know shit about any of this. I'm not an electrical engineer. I don't have any understanding about electronics. But he kind of said, well, put this on the cart, put this on the cart, put this on the cart, grab some of these wires here, put this, and what I want you to do is build a Faraday cage. And so I had to study about what a Faraday cage was, which, to simplify it for anyone, is just a microwave. Basically, it keeps electronic signal contained or out of a space. And in electrophoresis or electrophoresis, for whatever it was, we're studying neurons on the microscale. The electrical signal from the rest of the laboratory, any of these other things, could skew results. And so I had to create a Faraday cage, which was the best part of the entire experience. And that's where I found out I like building shit. And so he gave me the opportunity to build this out. And the most impressive part of the build out was that I was able to take the screen and make it really taut. So when you're building the walls of the Faraday cage, I built it, maybe it was like 4 foot tall by 3 by 3. And I built it on the plates and I'd screwed it in. It was nice and structurally sound. And I remember like wedging in some rubber grommet style gasket to the screen into the like aluminum and I don't know where I got the materials from, but I'd gone into the engineering hall and they had some scrap materials, and eventually I'd grab some plexiglass and create this tray to the point where I'd eventually get it so that I could put the neurons that I was growing into artificial cerebral spinal fluid to then create a wash and then the zap to create signal somehow out of this old equipment. But the most impressive part of the entire process, and I got signal in, but I can never get signal out, and that's where I had to leave the project. But the most impressive part of the entire project was how taut and proud I felt when I got the screen wrinkle free in these big 3x4 foot panels of the Faraday cage, which was a surprise. And so the rest of everything else downstream was fun and educational, but that one moment was like, oh shit, I built something pretty decent. I remember giving a pat on the back, and I felt like fucking just the best feeling. So having left that experience after a year and a half, leaving the veterinary hospital, seeing the surgeries when you walk in, I knew that the veterinary people on campus with the engineering department and the College of Forestry and everything that was going on and some of those other hard sciences, I was like, the veterinary people are the most brilliant, and because they've got to find and diagnose and cure issues for patients that don't give you any feedback. So for them to understand these different systems and different organisms and be able to fix those problems, probably focused around larger animals, cats and that. But that was for me, I was like, the veterinary people are probably some of the sharpest people in the world. And so and then everything else, having different friends around different the pharmacy folks too, also fucking brilliant. And so the last year or so, I pursued a chemistry minor, and then I started dabbling with business, and didn't get quite a business minor, but was like one class out, and I was like 5 years in. I was like, all right, I got to call it. Like, I'd gotten the biology, got the chemistry minor, and then the one professor that kind of opened my eyes to business was an entrepreneurship class where I can't remember his name, but there was one of the other dudes in the rowing class at the time, and I wasn't too fond of him, and because he was a coxswain, and I always felt like we're pulling these guys around. They don't do anything but yell at us, this or that. And like at the time, this particular guy was in the boats with the dudes I was rowing with back in the day, a year ahead or so before, and was talking this and that, but kind of also just had this personality that was a little too entitled for me. I'm coming from rags, true rags, and he's probably, I don't know. So we do the entrepreneurship class, and at the end of the class, you're supposed to give a presentation on a functional business plan and present it to the class. And I remember, for whatever reason, we got paired up, maybe because he thought he knew I was a rower and I knew some of the guys. But I remember him being lazy as fuck. And that irritated me, because in the boats, you're only valued if you can pull your weight. And that's something that I still hold true today, is to make sure people around me are held to the standards of, are you pulling your weight? And so in the business with Flow, I measure people's performance based on the results that they're bringing to the table, not just attendance, showing up and saying something, right? And so just last year, my sister told me, I think we went through 50 plus unsuccessful employment relationships, and to find the good ones, like the Garretts, the Kodas, the Nicks, the Nates, Paulinas, Kates, everyone, these great people. So Sarah, you're in there too, don't worry. To the point now where I'm interviewing other candidates specifically for this summer with the intention of, first filter, and then we'll back up again, is for, are you a good person? Would I let you in my house with my family if I'm not around and feel comfortable, right? And so that's where, our clientele, for the most part, what I found in residential, align with some of the other great firms. Well, we'll talk about that too later, but align with some of the other market leaders in and around the Portland area, because I know that those people that call on someone that has standards, that wants someone that has high standards to do their roofing project, is going to appreciate the vetting process of finding quality individuals to bring into their house. So what else? So we get through rowing. We did the walk. Rowing gave us a great appreciation. The scientists we were around gave us great appreciation for the detail. We walk, and through rowing, I had a girlfriend at the time who was super into climbing that last year or two, and she broke my heart. She said I didn't ask her out soon enough, and there's a bunch of other things that was pretty upsetting about that because she was such a cool gal, but sharper than shit, but also like physically, like also being rowers are fucking built. Like being around the student athletic population, I knew that like better than any Greek thing that these were my people, right? And so come to find that that her friends, as we go over there, they named their house the bathhouse. It was kind of funny, and they were big into climbing, and that introduction led me to meet with a guy who, Corey, would go on to be, I think he works on helicopter repairs now. He gets flown all around the world to do that. And also an amazing engineer. He ends up marrying one of the gals in the house as well. He hooked me up with an outfit that some of you might know out in Maupin, which is Sage Canyon Outfitters. And so Sage Canyon comes into the picture. He says, "Hey, Verrill's not bad. You should consider hiring him." I was like, "Hey, dude, I want to do something different for the summer after I graduated." And so, like the next week after graduation, I move out to Maupin because they had a room in the in the guidehouse, legendary guidehouse, and I ended up finding out that one of the other guys at Oregon State, he was on the wrestling team, was also guiding, but he would come out just on the weekends. I chose to live the fucking life. I was like running down to the school, doing lunges, running and working out, because at the time, that 5th year, I was just completely focusing on not letting the lessons that I'd learned over those 5 years slip from existence, which we all look back on to our education and it's hard to pull the lessons, but the physical like memorization of the terminology or the theories, right? But the people we all remember, the places all seem familiar. The gap in the time, though, is something I've always been trying to figure out. Like, what is that feeling of space, like between the moment when you were in the place for the first time and then coming back to the place for the first time? So, like going back to campus, we had a couple different projects we got called out for down there. And then also going back for alumni rows, going back for just to talk with some peoples too. That it's hard to understand that gap in time, but then the familiarity of the moments when you were there. It just it's insane. Time is a fucking trip, literally. The warp of progress. But the thing is, too, though, it's wild. I've got buddies who I don't necessarily talk to much anymore who didn't do anything after high school. My neighbor, who are talking about hunter-gatherers, about the hunter-gatherer thing, he actually dropped out of high school and stayed living with his parents. And I struggled to figure out why. His perception of the world was just a little bit different, but he still had a great understanding for good morality, good sense of humor, family values, which was important to me. But his lack of exploration and curiosity was where the divide ended up being more of a serious issue. And some of the last conversations I had with him were around his health, because he would talk about going to the doctor and the doctor prescribing this and that, and then always having to go to the doctor. And I was like, well, you have a lot more control over your health than I think you think. You shouldn't be relying on anyone to tell you what you put in your body or how to treat your body. You should treat yourself as this blessed, optimized rocket ship, literally a spaceship to take your body, your physical muscle and bone, your meat packet isn't you. You are the neural network within. And the fact that you are given proprioception to be able to interact with your environment is so that you can learn, as we're an extension of the universe. Now that's where I get a little too wishy-washy, right? So, and that ties into flow and energy, which we'll get to even further down. But to give you guys like the real origin story, you're probably understanding at this point, you're probably not even listening anymore, but like the idea is that I'm not coming from a construction background, okay? And I'll be the first one to tell you. But fuck, we've learned a shit ton, right? And so that takes us up through guiding in the guide house. I had all sorts of different experiences that were aligned more with what you might think would happen in college years. But at the time too, I was like, fuck getting a job, fuck going after what is everyone else doing, and then what do I want to do? I want to travel. I want to make decisions free of concern apart from money. I want to create something. I want to build, knowing how I enjoyed that last interaction in the laboratory. I want to apply science to something. And we don't apply a lot of science to flow or how we flow, but I had some really awesome product ideas for creating something that I'm still looking at pursuing after everything's set and settled with flow. We've still got a long way to go. But the idea is, so after rowing, we would get all of the bachelorette groups, and there was a group of dudes that were on a bachelor party, and we had a spill of a yard sale on one of our re-entries where, I'd asked them, do you guys want to go back in? And at the time I'd just learned, because one of the veteran guides was saying, well, you got to line up your boat with the shelf, and if it's not parallel to the shelf, then you'll fucking flip it or something. But you kind of want to flip it to give the people an experience. But I'd aligned it with the shelf on my re-entry, and it took me a couple times, and we got spun out. Sometimes we didn't dip, sometimes we get a second or third approach, and dunking your front half of the boat is so satisfying, because what it does is it gives you one hell of a ride, and it's like almost riding the wave as the river is literally falling into the boat. And this particular, I didn't get quite parallel with the bachelor party, and I remember it dipped and it rocked the boat up like it's supposed to, but then it turned the boat and spun it out to the point where everyone in the boat flies. I got a picture of a dude just almost flat parallel with the water, just flying. The cooler, the beers, everything is completely shot. And thankfully no one got hurt. I never had anyone get hurt since, and we go on these trips yearly almost. And that particular experience, everyone's cheersing. We got half the oars in the boat and the beers back, and everyone's just like, woo, we're never going to forget that one. And it was completely reckless on me, for that. And I do care about people's safety, but that was super, you're not going to be able to control that. And so actually there's scales of points. You get the point for the dump of the boat, but the idea is that the legendary guide status that I was pursuing was to get back up on the boat as it was flipped over, which to crawl up and over before it completely flips, so that way you end up on the boat and you can save everyone, and then you look like this legendary guide. And they talked about this in the boathouse, and I was just like, ooh, I want that, enamored by the option to create the opportunity and then also to make it happen. So after that one experience, though, I dove in even more, and I remember having some families and some bachelorette parties where I'd literally fucking wear the snorkel before we go out. I get over the boat and tell everyone, this is how it's going to happen. You go over the it's like a heavy class 3. It's not even a class 4. It's definitely not a class 5. doesn't matter what the CFM for the year is. Just, it can be plus or minus. And there was always this fear, like the drought's going to dry up the river, and it never happened. But you would always want to try to get your boat as close to the rock as possible before you dip down. And people, I would just tell them, like, look, we're going to paddle as hard as we can, coming from rowing, and I'm gonna put my snorkels on, and we're gonna see what happens, you know. And I've been down enough to know that if you didn't hit it right, you're at more of a risk than if you did hit it right. So telling people bug, get out of there. You have to, if you don't want to paddle and you just want to hold on, just secure your fucking oar, right? And like, this is, you got like a 3-second count, and time literally slows down as you're going over the edge, because the front of the boat goes and it pulls the rest of it down. Obviously it's connected, but like it's such a bigger boat. If you got a 14-footer, or if you got a bigger boat, like a 16, and there's 10 people in there, it just happens that much slower. The first part of the boat's in the water, you're up above, you're looking at the camera, you're smiling, this shit's about to go down, and it just starts to happen in slow motion. The water goes silent when in those moments too. That's a different type of flow that we'll talk about. But and eventually I'd invite my parents down. Kudos to them making it down the falls too. But Moppin it was an amazing summer that year, and we got to dabble with all sorts of different adventures on the water, and the games we play up at the row house and the different activities of such an environment. So I'd also doubled down on that experience, and then worked in the shop at Sage Canyon to help create an opportunity, because at the end of the summer I was like, okay, we made more than a lot of other guides because we doubled and worked like an extra 20 hours in the shop. So I bought a plane ticket, a one-way to New Zealand, and that was going to happen in December. So I can't remember what happened between that. I think I might have went back to Florence, lived with my parents for a couple months, and then I went to New Zealand. My dad's like, you can't go that far, not fuck with Fiji. So he bought me a week layover in Fiji, which was awesome at the time, because then I got to experience a different culture, a little more island vibes, and went island hopping for that week. And that was some magic there. Like, different than New Zealand, because you're literally talking about small little tropical islands, but I'd gotten to dabble with heavy social media style travel in the way where everyone is so glued to their devices now. It's like, it's painful that you can't even have a real conversation anymore. I struggle with this, is, paying attention to others, giving them your complete attention. It's work, right? So Fiji was insane in the way that I'd caught some awesome fish, got my first batch of coconuts, met some amazing people, had a birthday celebration. Should have learned to surf at that time, but didn't. And I think my dad was kind of protecting me from great whites. Otherwise I would have probably learned back in Oregon. But and then get to New Zealand, and I was in New Zealand's airport when a buddy called. He might have called LA, or it might have been, I was in one of the airports, and he goes, what are you doing? Because he knew I just got done with guiding and I fucking around. I can't remember who told him or something, but I'm like, I'm in the airport, dude. I'm flying out. I'm going to New Zealand. And he's like, I'll meet you there. So he flies in not soon after. And one of the last dudes I was living with the 5th year at Oregon State, and he would go on and help build the pizza trailer and then go off onto his own thing. But he shows up, and it was an absolute joy to have a dude who, and we would ride around Corvallis or bikes in the summertime and shit, like absolute G of a character. And beyond, he is way too handsome for his own good, and he knew it. And so we're traveling around New Zealand and everything. We stay with our friend Bailey from the rowing team. She's had this amazing dream farm up on the North Island, not too far away from the Shire, like 10 minutes away down from the Shire, on the highest hill on the North Island. You can see both coastlines. And I wish, too, and this is the reason why I'm going to go back, maybe even this winter, we'll see. I wish I knew surfing before I moved on from Ragland, because I got to go back to Ragland in Christchurch, too. So we're considering doing like a motorcycle trip as like a 10-year anniversary to that trip, which we'd have to do. That's a 10-year anniversary. So probably have to get all the guys together. That would be insane. So we stay up on the farm there for a couple weeks, and her dad's this big time electrical contractor, started from scratch his own company, had a partner. Now they're wiring dairies and the biggest industrial commercial jobs on the North Island. I'm pretty sure they probably fuck with South shit now too. But he had bought in this foreclosed dream farm from a guy that had this villa of a house up on the hills, and just insanely awesome rugby family in New Zealand, and taught us a lot about the way of their approach to living in a state in a grateful manner, such kindness. And then him showing us around his buddy's place, rugged New Zealand bikers and the Maoris and stuff, was such an incredible experience. And then we eventually move on. We'd stay with their family as we go down south, and then made our way south to go do some reckless adventuring on the South Island, which is where you get a lot more of the geographic wonder that New Zealand's known for. This North Island is super agricultural, still got great, amazing things. Never did the glowworm ice cave, fucked up on that, but that's the reason why we're going to go back. So jump over from the South Island, we hopped over to Australia for just a 3-week stint over to Byron Bay before it blew up, and that's where I learned to surf. And Byron Bay is 20-30 foot water visibility, beautiful point break with a bay. Just picked up and fell in love with surfing because it's just inherently just naturally beautiful. And it's probably gotten way too crowded. I think Justin Bieber and some other fucking crazy celebrities started moving in and people started following them and stuff, but still an amazing, beautiful place. And I'll have to go back just to surf the Gold Coast, because there's a lot of spots I feel like that are still pristine but untouched from crowds. That East Coast Australia is thousands and thousands of miles long, so we'll get to that someday. And then circle back. We met a buddy. We flew back to New Zealand and met a guy, Hugo, who was doing backpacking the way that so many do, but he was working as he was going. So he wanted to go and pick avocados on the North Island before we were flying back. And so we dropped him off. Can't remember what happened here. I feel like something happened and me and Wolf split. I think it was because he met Charlotte and he stayed behind to be with her. And she made like a 3-pointer in front of him at one of the hostels, and he like fell in love with that girl. And she's a sweet Swiss lady or Dutch, I can't remember, but he flies back and forth, and they're probably going to have a fan bam here, hopefully. And seeing him happy and settled and focused on one lady was so satisfying. And then like to have gone through everything for him to find her that one in that way, and for it to work out. I feel bad because of the distance, but when you want something bad enough, really nothing gets in your way, right? So I found myself, I feel like he may have gone back to her, and then I took Hugo, who we found in the hostel. It might have been Wellington, I don't know, but Hugo comes through and I tell him, hey, I'm gonna get a fucking rental car and head back up to the airport at Auckland, driving all the way back through all the different things. And we had our own little adventure. I remember it was just me and him because I was like, I got no pictures of Wolf on the North Island going back. then it was funny because the farm that Hugo settled on was like, dude, you're not picking here because you're too tall. And they're like, too many tall dudes will make a workman's comp claim because you got to pick underneath the orchard height where the canopy is. So the you have to pick kilos, X amount of kilos per minute in order to be qualified. And I was too tall, and then the tall dudes are apparently making work comp claims, picking avocados on the farm. So they bet for shorter dudes, and Hugo was probably like 5'10" at the time, which is better than my 6'3". So, excuse me. Say goodbye to Hugo, man. That was an insane part of the journey. We're still connected on the socials. And so I fly back from Auckland, and I'm back with my parents. I'm like, okay, now what? So then I started from that perspective. At the time, I was like, well, I still have a serious interest in toxicology, in trying to figure out why we're able to shit on this planet and get away with it. And so I thought I was going to go slapping hands of big corporations and try to figure out what was the tie in the environmental space between the internal health component, and then like try to connect the two to find a reason why I was more interested in like fertilizer being contaminating the food system like it still does, in microplastics, and then trying to figure out and tie who was responsible to the punishment. And so I thought toxicology, that's a fun one. So Oregon State has a accelerated master's toxicology program, and I was like, well, I don't mind going back to Oregon State for another year and a half or so. It was an 18-month program. So I moved back up from my parents to Corvallis to study at a farmhouse. I just rented for a month to focus and have the environment. I stayed with this old man and on this farm next to one of the nurseries north of town, and he was so proud of his son who was playing football for Western. He was like, oh yeah, he's gonna go pro and this, and he'd come in. The dude was massive, 6'10", like tight end, and I was like, damn, like yeah, you could easily do it. But his dad was having health problems, and I was chill living with the old dude because I was just focused on studying. So I ended up actually testing really average, and it was the language part that I sucked at. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to be going into a professional program, because I thought after toxicology masters, it'd be so cool to go after some sort of PhD and pursue teaching others all this. But then, I was also seeing some cycling news around people getting whacked by mystery entities talking about, if you're going to step on their toes too much because you're going in after policing these insanely powerful organizations, that they'll just make it disappear. Which was combined with my average test score is the reason why I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to pursue toxicology again. And so then moved back again to Florence with the fam. And in the travels, had been exposed to enough people where I was like, why is the U.S. is so not anti-fam, but the culture is that, you go and make it yourself. And whereas a lot of the people that I met there along the travel was that they were way closer to their family than the American culture. So at that point, I was like, okay, I'll move back in with the parents. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to see what I can do in this little town to save money and to see where things take me. So I'd gotten into catering for an old high school boss, where that relationship ended up going south. And I did that for 2 summers, doing his catering thing. And I built some relationships in the event space to the point where when that relationship went south, I moved back to Portland, where all my college buddies were, and stayed at Cooper's on his couch for like 2 or 3 months, just dabbling with different opportunities. And eventually it was between solar and gutters. So I know, a long time now, we're an hour into this thing where we finally start to hear a little more about construction. They got into going to solars because that's what of a sham industry that is a very high pressure, low ROI, even though they seem to say otherwise. I'm not a big believer in solar until I see, a 30 to 50 year solar warranty. And even then, there's going to be efficiency drops in the panel and the product. So, excuse me. We'll go ahead and I'm going to pause, take a break, do some lunges, push-ups, and we're going to come back to this and pick it up right at that point. And, keep in mind, I moved back to Portland. I'm staying on my buddy's couch because I'm broke. I left the relationship from Florence because the guy fucked me over on not making me anything for working his trailer for 2 summers. I left with nothing. Dude got everything. But that's what you have to do in some cases to leave a bad relationship, and you kind of just got to walk away. And so we'll pick it up after this. Alrighty. So these breaks are awesome. I come back a little bit refreshed also just to make sure Garrett's good to go. So we get to the point where we're jumping into something that resembles construction, which is gutters. I had gotten in with, when I was staying on the couch, I gotten interviews for solar and gutters, and the gutter outfit that hired me was about to get into Costco, and they were running into some issues. They had some serious mismanagement problems with subs, all this crazy stuff. They taught me how not to do gutters, which is eventually how I learned to do gutters. And they had like a 10-week backlog of issues and fires to put out that I willingly jumped into after they sent me up to Seattle for training. And the world seemed like then a lot bigger than it feels now. Maybe it's because we were just hyper connected more than ever, but I thought back then I was going to be the world's biggest gutter guy. And I thought, well, if I hit 1 million feet of gutters or if I hit 10 million feet of gutters, I reverse engineered it. I was like, I could be in multiple states, like this, that, blah, blah, blah. That was at least the dream, and I'd always just kind of scaled it up with whatever I'd done. So I wasn't doing events anymore. I was at this point doing the gutter thing. I was the manager regionally, which is an assistant manager, which I come to find their Seattle manager actually told me that he went and got his own license to become the company's subcontractor, but basically in-house. And so he taught me how to do that. And eventually I would become a subcontractor in the Portland region, where basically we were installing the gutters for the company in Costco, which is no longer in Costco, right? And because gutter guards are a sham industry, they all overpromise and underdeliver. And so, how do you talk the heartbreaking conversations of the looks on the faces of these customers when they spent a pretty penny on some of these systems to find out that the product doesn't work well for their tree case, which over half of the issues in Portland, Oregon, and around other places are all evergreen, fir, and pine related, really small needles. There's no product that works at all against those. Regardless, it's just going to increase the frequency of services relating to maintenance to service the gutters properly. And so your trade-off is that you don't have to clean your gutters potentially all the time, but you have to then clean the filters, the screens as that alternate. And so you still have maintenance related. So I saw this and what they were doing and how they were over promising to people, and I was just like, I can't. This is bullshit. Same thing with solar. It was this bullshit, high pressured sales stuff, and I was on the sales side, so I didn't know. And but there was always that conversation of, well, the sales guy said this and that, and I'm like, well, this is the reality of what's happening. And so thankfully this continued on, but because I wasn't necessarily, this continued on for 3 or 4 years, and the reason why I stuck with it is because as a subcontractor, having like the exclusivity of that relationship actually did pay decently enough to the point where I was like, well, it's worth sticking through at least. But I knew not being in there enough, I knew that being in deep enough that wasn't my calling. I wasn't going to be a gutter guy forever. I was like, where are all the pretty people at, in the gutter world? So I'd actually randomly, having all those contacts in 2017, backwards a couple of years before the pandemic, me and my buddies were just kind of fucking around. And I remember one of my last events, it was the Brownsville Country Music Festival. One of the vendor gals got my panties in a bunch because she was doing ice cream. I was also doing ice cream. And still being super hyper competitive at that time, she was doing pizza. And she had a pizza line. When everyone else was closed, she was still serving pizza all night. And I was like, wow, I'm jealous. And I told myself, I was like, I'm going to show you how to do pizza one day. And so that winter, I was telling my buddies, like, what if we just built a pizza trailer, And there's like one event that was on my mind, which was this tulip festival down in Woodburn. And the Woodburn Tulip Festival, it's a big thing. It's agro-tourism. The Iversons put on an amazing show, probably like the best on the West Coast. And the idea, was entertaining about the whole thing was that they said yes, and we didn't even have a trailer built. That fall, we were like, hey, we want to participate at this event, and we want to bring in like a luxury pizza experience. And they were like, sure. You have experience? You have a picture of the... We had nothing. We printed out some janky ass rendering that wasn't even what we built, and we had no plans or anything. But having a little bit of savings from all the gutters, I was like, okay, let's do this. Let's pull the trigger. I spent everything I had in my savings at the time was like 50 or 60 grand. And I was like, let's do it. They gave us the contract, so we had to build. And that we got the trailer, we ordered it in November. The guy took a month to fabricate it. We got the trailer in December, and we went and rented a flex warehouse space over off of Powell. And we built that trailer from mid-December till the event started in March. We had about 90 days, and we squeezed in a trip to a pizza show in Vegas. But day in, day out, you can go to the page and you'll see us kind of taking this 30 by 8 foot trailer, a teeny home frame, triple axle on 5,500 axles, which should have been overbuilt. And we should have designed the whole thing so the oven's set over the axles, which you don't when you don't know what you're doing, right? And so we built the oven over the tongue, which created a massive headache for the vehicles. It actually didn't break the frame, but the fabricator eventually would help reinforce it, said that the tongue was bent 4 inches down. And so we were like, we got lucky. So they towed it down to Woodburn after we finished building it. And that's when we found out it was bent. So we called the fabricator during the show, and they said, yeah, bring it on after the show. And that's when they had to like rebend it plain to square it up so that way they could reinforce the tongue. And they built an insane front end on that thing. It cost like $3 or $4 grand. I was like, be nice to me, man. I can't remember the fab shop, but they were right there in Woodburn, just like down the street. And they hooked it up. But we through that course of that winter built out the trailer to be like this teeny home design, and you don't have any plans, so you don't really kind of understand anything. Thank God we had Dane, who had graduated with us. He was one of the golf buddies from our high school program, who had won state with Wolf. Wolf was my roommate through this ordeal, and when I moved up to Portland, I moved out of Cooper's house. Wolf was trying to find a place, and so he helped me move, and we moved over to Lake Oswego behind 24 Hour Fitness over on McEwen, where we'd do gutters for a couple of years before we moved in with a couple roommates we poached one of the guys, Brendo, from 24 Hour, and then we found one of the guys in Pizza, and we all moved in together down in Milwaukee behind the Burgerville there, over by all the used car spots. And that's where I would continue to do gutters and continue to do events in the summertime with pizza. And I thought, that's actually too where the pandemic hit. I thought that's where we're going to be doing the state fair and everything. And so we did the one big event with Tulip Festival. We created a great relationship that kept inviting us back. And then the pandemic hit, and we were 100% event focused. So the Tulip Festival led to one show, led to more shows, and we would just be chasing the biggest, the baddest concert music festivals, rodeos, and fairs that we could possibly get into, which was such a headache. The carny lifestyle was such a headache, but you learn a lot. You learn about customer service, you learn about contracts, you learn about relationships, you learn about communication, you learn about hiring, you learn about education, you learn about creativity, you learn about yourself and what you're willing to go through for the dream. And the dream at that time was really based around creating the best pizza possible, because from the get-go, the first pie that we had baked up comes from a bakery that's no longer around, Alessio's Bakery. Dean, and where Roman Roman is actually running the trailer now in 2025, and he says he wants to buy it, but we'll see. He's running out of Southeast right now at a outdoor school where they do axe throwing and indoor archery and stuff. We started out that show, and we took an award-winning New York Times bestselling recipe, and we gave it to Dean at Alessio's, and he was like, all right, I got you. And he could whip up hundreds and hundreds of pounds, is what we needed on the weekly. We've kind of figured, okay, we're going to need 100 pounds this first week. And then we over-ordered, of course. And then we had extra we had to throw away. And then we learned, okay, the next weekend's going to be busy. Oh, wait, you heard the number's going to be what? You have that many tickets sold for the Tulip Fest? So there was one weekend, I think we did between 500 and 700 pounds of dough, like giant food-grade garbage cans worth of dough. And we did it so fucking the hard way, in that eventually I would learn over the years as it kept going until eventually I had to stop it. But we would take the big barrel of dough, we'd cut it out, weigh it out, roll it up, let it cure, proof, and then roll it out, sheet it, and then make a pizza with it. Instead of finding a relationship where maybe we had pre-sheeted pies, which is eventually where it led to. But of course, your quality goes down when that happens, because through the pandemic, Alessio Dean, he had to get rid of the bakery because his landlord was selling the building. That was a big deal. During the pandemic, then the team split up. So Wolf's dad had a health scare. Dane had to go be with his fam. And so things were starting to kind of fall apart because we were so vent focused. Pizza was a saving grace, because I saw this new dream where we were appreciated. We got to create something. It was warm. It was tasty. It was full. The universe was showing us how potentially rich love and creation can be through food. And it was sustainable. Like, the big shows were a hit. Like the Tulip Festivals were 6-figure shows. And 6 figures doesn't mean you take 6 figures home, right? In food, everyone knows that. The farm was taking 30%. Okay? So imagine trying to take an already small margin business, and then you have to give 25-30% to the farm. A quarter of your pizzas, you don't even get to keep it. So that was the game in all events, pretty much. And so it was a grind to think that someone else had their hand in your cookie jar for all that you've gone through to build. It wasn't even the tax man, it was the events. And that's the model that a lot of events still use, is that percentage model. So food is a hard game. And if you've got a landlord and you got a business that's successful and thriving already, kudos, hats off to you, because that shit's tough and the margins are small. So trying to create a living on that, generally the owner's pretty close to the restaurant if it's newer, because just his ability to keep things going the way it needs to helps make sure that the margins are good enough to keep the lights on. Okay. So that winter, the pandemic comes. We do events and catering in the summertime. I had gutters in the winter, and had gutters going through the summer because I hired a project manager who could do and operate and manage everything, because we were so small at that time that I gave him a percentage, said, here, operate this is the schedule, this is the standards, these are the guidelines, these are the relationships, and you can go and have the opportunity to create something. And at the time, even the small little humble beginnings, that first year out on our own, I think we did like 250,000 gross in gutters. The next year we did 400,000, and that's where we made the big pivot after that. In 2021 was when roofs officially started. And so we got in a couple of years out on our own, away from the sleazy Costco company, because of the pandemic. Is a beautiful reason why. And they changed the style of their gutter to be this like fancy crown style. It wasn't even a K style, it wasn't a fascia style, it's a crown style, they called it. And that made my machine obsolete. And so I saw that coming and said, hey, we're gonna go out on our own. I had 45 5-star reviews and a pizza trailer and a gutter truck. So I'm like, okay, what do we gotta do here? We ended up in 2020, construction was still viable. We were now living not in Milwaukee, but I moved over. Wolf had moved back to Brookings to be with his dad. So I had Brendo and Lucy at the time, and they were running pizza and everything was flowing good. Isaac was doing gutters. But I knew that gutters was going to take a lot of patience to get to being that eventually the dream status of what would be just the biggest gutter guy in the country, which was so far removed from the reality of where we were financially, right? And the reality of what we could possibly make happen. And so since then, I've learned quite a bit. We're still nowhere we're going to be. Trying to keep the underdog mindset throughout the entire journey, because who doesn't like an underdog story, right? So, the Beavers, we've always been the underdogs because Uncle Phil's always helped out the University of Oregon, and they've got an amazing sports program on there, amongst other things. So we would then, and I wanted to click record on this because I've told this story so many different times with different variations to different people. Most recent time, my lawyer wanted to have like a catch up, and he's like, tell me about how it started. And so this same conversation happened, and I thought, well, I gotta fucking click record on this shit, because I've told this too many times with just not enough detail. The filler, I would give people the kind of the highlight reel, like a 1 minute explanation of boom, 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 5 years, 6-year plan. That's what happened. So pandemic ends up shutting all the events down. I focus on construction because it was still an essential business, and I'm hook, line, and sinker. Like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to stand by the failures, the ups and the downs, just like everyone else who made it. I'm not going to go back and find a salaried position. And so the pandemic gives you a lot of time to sit and think about the good, bad, and the ugly. And the pandemic showed me that I wasn't in the gutters. I wasn't in the gutters like I thought I was going to be, that I needed to change in a way that I saw could be a little more sustainable, because a healthy gutter project somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 might have somewhere between $200 and $800 profit after your labor, your truck, your insurance, your crews, everything's paid for, your materials. And then you got to pay taxes, then you got to pay rent, then you got to live, right? Like, so there wasn't enough, and there wasn't enough the bigger jobs to make it like sustainable. But I, again, just like with food, created relationships. And so we'll talk about those relationships, those GCs here in a second. And so pandemic comes, I have my own reviews, we jump ship, we're on our own, 45 5-star reviews, there's no one feeding us work, it's all relationship based. Jobs few and far between come in, and I'm cutthroat. I'm going down, bottom of the barrel. There's dudes that are selling at the time $4 and $5 a foot, 5K prices on like Facebook and shit, like probably not insured, just doing it on the side, have a machine, tone it in, not. So I'm competing with those guys and also building a relationship with GCs using those cutthroat prices, and they love it. Oh yeah, we'll take your cheap gutters, no problem. I'll upsell them and triple your price. So, and that's what they did. And I built a couple key relationships out of that. One of which was a big roofing outfit that would sub me out to do the gutters because I was cheap. And I made one mistake in that one of those relationships. I tried to go dabble with Leaf Filter, and Leaf Filters, everyone knows that they're the next biggest sham company ever, but they were giving you consistent work, but it was bottom of the barrel everything. And so they stole $1,500 in their retainer fee that they never give you back. And I did have one insurance claim on that where we dented a pole barn and siding, and I stuck through it and said, hey, well, I don't have the savings for this, but here's my insurance, and they got me for it. So that was one thing my lawyer was like, yeah, I saw you have that mark, but you did do the right thing. And I didn't have a choice. The GC, the fucking big ass paper contract at the time, had their way with my insurance to make sure that their client was all good to go. Anyway, we redid the project after the siding was replaced. Everything was kosher. Happy customer in the end of it all. You stand by your work in construction. Did that throughout this journey. And so pizza in 2020 was non-existent, but construction and gutters was. But through 2020, I was like, okay, George Floyd also got murdered, right? So events are nowhere to be seen, but we still have this asset. 4 days after George Floyd got murdered, everyone's upset, everyone's going out, letting people know. I said, okay, let's go. And so I hooked up to my truck at the time and pulled it up to an empty lot across from Goodwill off of 99 northbound, and an empty lot there. I negotiated with the landlord at the time, said, hey, I'm going to park on this lot, no fence or anything. I'm going to come in. I don't want to pay any rent until there's more trucks around. And they were like, cool, yeah, you won't pay any rent until there's more trucks around. So all summer, there's no more trucks. And so we got this empty lot. I brought in an artist to paint on the graffiti on the wall. We were bringing in music on the weekends. That first day, though, I sold one fucking pizza by myself. And that next week, I would do it by myself. And I would sell 2 to 4 pizzas the next day. And then 8 people would stop by. And then more people would stop by. And I made every pizza myself. I didn't let anyone else in the trailer. I was having all the conversations. It was getting a little warm, and it was summertime, and I was like, this is going to be a long summer, right? Trying to sell pizzas. And I think we got it to the point where we were on average for the summer, we grossed like $33,000 roughly a month. And that was mainly because we would do music on the weekends. We created a vibe and an experience for everyone. We were trying to do everything we possibly could. I wanted to feast or famine through pizza, and pizza is so sentimental to me because I'd admired myself, which is not meant to be egotistical, but I admired the fact that I could look down at the canvas, which was the sheet of dough, and create something that people liked. Like that I would eat so much pizza back then, but like that felt so good. It was what kept me going, was that responses I would hear from people's experience tasting the dough and like getting the custom eco-friendly boxes with the all-seeing eye logo. Felt so good that like the money was irrelevant. And that's what I loved about pizza and restaurant, and that's why we went into pizza, was the thing that brought me and my buddies together, that bonded us through the creation of the pizza trail and everything else. That's probably the most beautiful aspect in your entrepreneurial journey, is the blindness and the unsurety of whether or not it's all going to work out. And so then you go and you do it, and it becomes about business, and you got to deal with overhead and HR and all the tech. It becomes less thrilling. But those times are so beautiful. And so looking down at the canvas, I'm making as much pizza as I can. I bring in the guys, like we're making more pizzas, and eventually I would get a pallet of boxes. I was like, there's no way this is the real thing. And so then the fires get so bad. Like there was that during that, in George Floyd, everyone's freaking out, reasonably so. The the fires come in, is the worst air quality in the world there for that week. And so we closed down, and I'm like, ah, damn it, it's still food, and we still have tight margins, and it's not like we're Ken's Artisan, it's not like we're a Pizza Shoals, we're not Lovely 50/50s, we're not Nostrana, we're nobody. And I tried everything in my power to get us to 100 5-star reviews so that we could try to dabble with the delivery apps to try to have a better flow of pies to help cushion it. But then when the smoke came through, my guys, they didn't want to work, which is reasonable. Again, businesses were closing because people didn't want to go through the smoke. It was like carcinogenic levels of smoke in the air. You couldn't even see across the street. It was so bad. Excuse me. But there was one day where I opened up and I did a thing on social, and I turned on the delivery apps, and people showed up. It was crazy. And I just said, hey, we're going to do, I think it was like 40 pies or something small. It took a couple hours. People showed up, they got their pies, and they went back. And I was just doing it to cover rent at the time. Like, I was in survival mode, and I had always been in survival mode because Gutters is a low margin product with like cutthroat pricing. And then pizza as well. I wanted to be fair with people. We had like an $11 cheese, and then we went up to like an $18 Aphrodite, which was the slow cured Olympia Provisions Chorizo El Rey with the Hood River Peach, which is what you get in the late summer. The C-Bar, the Chicken Bacon Avocado Ranch. There was so many others, and eventually we'd turn into the cupping pepperonis from Columbia Meats, which was like the best pepperoni I could possibly find. And if I would go back on that, I would actually have increased the cheese quality. Eventually, I found this beautiful mozzarella that would give you like this marshmallow toasted crust. Oh my gosh. So I feel like I was just getting great at finding the way I wanted to do pizza. And then after the smoke and everything came back, then the rains would come back, and I was like, we're not gonna do pizza in the rains. I'm not gonna fucking sit in the rain when there's no one coming outside. So I shut down. We brought back pizza, and I pulled the trailer back to Florence, and I focused on gutters. That November, I prepared Isaac, my gutter guy, my manager at the time, said, hey dude, I'm gonna go find a company I can get into and learn about roofs. And had done some dabbling with some other businesses online during the pandemic to try to think, drop shipping is going to be huge. And it was just not my business model. I didn't have endless time and or funds to kind of learn what needed to happen there to be successful. And so I knew I had a pizza trailer, and I had to be able to use something that I knew I could succeed at. And so we went through that detail, and I had enough saved up between the bigger jobs of gutters. I did a couple of apartment complexes for that one bigger GC, and that one bigger GC, I sat him down that winter. I was like, hey, I'm going to go in and learn how to do roofs. I don't want to learn roofs from you necessarily. I didn't say that, but like, I'm going to go into this company and I'm going to learn about roofs. And he was like, you're crazy. Anyway, I got hired. I went there and I did it. I came back and I said, hey, I'm going to go start selling roofs, or at least the way I feel like I want to approach roofing. And so I go into the company. They're not what they were. They were the car salesman, high pressure bullshit. But I learned their reps were focusing on a couple key details that I would then focus on to be the brand that we are today, which was flow. And so at the time, Never Rust Gutters, Isaac, I said, hey, you're going to get a bigger commission. You're going to make sure this thing's floating through while I go learn this. And I went 007 into this company, and they taught me too much about roofing. And I figured on the back end, I'd learn everything else about what the materials to order, the better materials to order. And then I'd use the actual install to be on site and learn how these things were installed. And the first 2 years, then I'd take this bigger GC to install my roofs. And they had capacity, which is what I needed, but they also had margin, which is what you need more of. And so their cheap labor monitoring it on site, I would then see, okay, this is how a roof's installed, this is how a roof is not installed, right? So that was incredible, that part of the journey. But then pizza was nowhere to be seen, which was the best thing that could have happened, because Alex Hormozy calls it the pretty lady in the red dress. You got to stay focused. I did the best I could to be determined to be the best roofer I could possibly be, to give people the best possible roofing experience I could give them. And so by being the on-site project manager, I was okay with an unbranded experience, which would then soon change because they started to get a little too greedy in the way that they saw the trajectory I was growing towards. And so the first year we did like 50 roofs. After the fact that we did one last pizza event. So I did one more Tulip Fest in 2021, and I took Brendo, we went down to Costa Rica, had a gun pulled on us. And that experience was like, oh, life is short, right? And so we felt really lucky to be flying back, and we came back, and I was like, okay, I'm going to make a change. No more gutters. I'm going to brand. I built a website real cheaply, flew down to Vegas, Carvana, got a truck, drove it back up through Yosemite. That was a whole experience. And then got a lead for a job against my old employer from back when Home Advisor was less of a scam. And Angie's List, those are complete scams. And they got me in front of a homeowner who, it was between me and my old employer, who I knew I was easily going to win against. And then I called out a detail that was not correct on her other inspection from another reputable company down there in Salem. And I said, this is wrong because, and this is right because. And she called me back a week later. I hadn't even had the truck wrapped until the job. And she said, hey, I want to go with the flow. And that was the first roof I ever got. And I didn't ask her to buy. I only used education to give her the best possible experience. And at that point, I was like, okay, my old employer would have made things really uncomfortable. And she told me the story. She said she had to kick them out of the fucking house. They wouldn't leave. I was like, that'll never happen with me. So, and still has not to this day. And we've done almost thousands of projects now. And we never ask for the sale, which is, and all the private equity guys would probably be like, well, you're dumb, kid. You don't know what the fuck you're doing. I tell my team, we always will lead through education because that's what I know works. That's what builds the best type of trust, where the phone will ring, where people enjoy the experience because they know they made the right choice because we're not making the choice for them, right? So it's super organic. And so from that first roof, that led into another roof, which led into another roof, and we'd try to do multiple roofs in a week. And then I would step back that fall knowing that, like, okay, I got enough to survive here. Let's build a better website. Let's make for better experiences. Let's follow up with all these other people. Let's create networks. Let's go for 100 roofs the next year. And so 2022, we did just shy of 100, and we didn't make it. The next year, 2023, we tried to make it to 100, but then there was starting to have some issues with that installer. I was like, hey, you're not showing up on time. I'm telling my people, like, we're going to show up at this time. Hey, your guys aren't doing good enough cleanup, right? Like, hey, customer's upset because of X. Like, so I was starting to have some issues, and I was like, okay, the subcontractor model is not the way. And so I remember in 2023, I'd had enough. I thought, I've semi-made it. I hit my goal, hit my 100 for the year. I'm going to splurge on an apartment that I could create the dream customer experience in. And it had this wonderful porch and Portland skyline view. And I would sit out there and just dream. And I would do painting, I would build, I would record, I would optimize, I'd make documents, I would outline the dream customer experience. And so in those first 3 years, I'd gotten from the 45 5-star reviews with gutters when I started, the trailers parked down the coast. I completely focused on roofing. I did a couple other events, and I would actually go up to do food up at the Washington. It was the farm, Busy Farm, and great people. And then eventually, one of my employees got like undercut me and stole the event from me. I was like, God damn. So that was a great opportunity, but I was like, now maybe this all happened for a reason, right? So we get to the point where we're like, okay, we can no longer subcontract you guys. You're starting to not care, to the point where like we're gonna be going after them because they created some issues, and they're not perfect. But the fact that they did not care means that I'm not gonna care what happens to them when my team goes after you. So what goes around comes around, right? So that being said, though, I made the pivots to dedicating the upward battle to bring labor in-house, W-2 project management in-house, inspectors in-house, to the point where we are today, but we still have a little bit more ground to cover. That apartment that I'd gotten gave me the opportunity to, and the space to think, how can we not fall in the trap that all the private equity guys are falling into, that I was falling into as a paper contractor? You just sub it out, right? It's just so easy, but you're not giving your customer what they're paying for, what they deserve, which is the quality, the communication, the documentation, the assurance that everything is going to be good for the long haul. And even if you're on site all the time, you're documenting, your communication is on point. So from those experiences, because I was so rigorously, stubbornly focused on creating the best experience possible, still today, we got up to over 250 reviews in those years. And then from the apartment, then I spun off into the Northwest warehouse over off of Nikolai, where we would huddle down for like 18 months, to where we were bursting out at the seams, doing the exact same thing, but I was hiring, I was training, and I had one room. It was 15 feet by 30 feet, and we had 10 people at some points crammed into this one room in the winter. Up to the point of 2025, we were in this shop to basically secure and hide the chute that everyone sees out on the highway, because I thought it was this secret weapon and I'd saved for it. And I thought, we're going to have this in this amazing upper hand that did give us the opportunity for some amazing projects, once in a lifetime projects, because we were assuring people that this is the asset that's necessary to do the job right. And it worked. But we knew we were going to need to make a move. We had to get somewhere bigger. The headaches of that Northwest spot in Northwest were all coming from the unsecured storage of vehicles and trailers, because homeless people, whoever, was fucking bashing into windows every other day. It seemed like thousands of dollars were going out the window for gas tanks, broken windows, all the bullshit. And so frustrating that I was like, okay, sister, we gotta make a move, we gotta make it and make it right. And there was amazing opportunity off of Columbia Boulevard that was really appealing, because it was a seller financed opportunity. It had brand new fence. It was great exposure on the corner right next to suppliers, right? That one seemed to be the best opportunity, but then bankers were saying that we weren't financially ready for it. And so that happened for a reason, right? Happened for a beautiful reason, because now we have the location where we are today, which is a blessing. It's bigger, it's more secure, it's got better exposure, it's more optimized for how we want to flow, to plant our flag, so that we can show people how dedicated we are to the process, to quality control, quality customer experiences for roofing that otherwise now we're up to 2025, right? So we got to 250 roofs last year. We're going to be capping and limiting our roofs this year. We're going to have very shortly here a real capacity conversation because we've got projects that are going to require full attention, specified, in-house, relationship to the max, safety, all the things. And it's going to completely test the entire team. And we have to tell the public, all of you guys, that we cannot serve everyone. And oddly enough, the manufacturers throw a wrench in it saying we're not going to increase prices a second time, which is the first time I've ever seen it. And so here we are in 2025. We've got the dream shop, and now we've got dream projects. We've got the dream team, and we have now dream opportunities. And we're in the dream. We're living it. I'm still pulling specs and helping my commercial team look at the details and help build out the proposals on the commercial side, and then now doing safety training and safety spec, and to the point where we're doing lunch and learns for engineering firms where they want to know how can we extend the system's lifespans of different systems, and we don't make claims to be the master of them all. I say, if anything, now we're the master of 1.5. I say roofs and gutters, but we specialize on only a couple different systems. We specialize on the asphalt steep slope side of things. I break it into, and people say, oh, we do residential, we do commercial. I say, no, we do steep slope and low slope. So we break it down to shingles, metal, and membrane. We don't do EDPM. We don't do built up. We don't do ballast. We don't do green roofs. We stick to shingles, metal, and membrane. And each of those has its nuances alone that makes it that if you don't know, then you have to rely on your network to help you through figuring out, what happens when it's a concrete deck, what happens when it's a metal deck, what happens in new construction, what's the timeline, what are your engineering, what's the spec calling for. So we're to this point now where I'm, for the first time ever, not looking at hiring for the mindset and training the skill, but now I'm hiring for the skill and looking for the will, but then training the mindset even more to basically unshackle people from the constraint of typical societal employment expectations around just showing up and doing your job, but actually giving people the opportunity to say, let's see what we can do to change your life, to give you to show opportunity around you so you can take the baton and pass it to people that deserve to have the best experience possible, which is going to give you more opportunities for growth in your bank account professionally, right? So now, this last week, I've hired a couple key competitor individuals. They're coming from competitors and they're saying, hey, dude, the private equity game is not what you think it is. And now I know this. I always knew this. I said, I've been on that side before. I know the private equity guys are all about the fucking numbers. They don't give a shit. They're just subbing things out. Like, we'll have a completely separate video on just the private equity approach and the flaws in it. But I invite them in. I could name all of the firms, my top competitors in Portland. They're all private equity backed because the ownership sells out at a point where they don't want to deal with all the headaches. They want to de-risk. They've been in the game so long. I understand that appeal. So they come in town and they just are all KPI focused. If you can hit the numbers, then you're in. If you're not, you're out, right? And if the customer says yes, great, and that sub it out, like, we don't want the liability, and they're not vertically integrated. So I call Flow full service. Full service meaning we do repairs, maintenance, restoration before we ever have conversation about replacement, because we don't want anyone to have to replace the roof. But there's a point in time when it needs to be done, right? But everyone has different value-based decision-making principles. Everyone has different risk tolerances. Everyone has different capacity for understanding, to the point where now, when we're having conversations with our commercial industrial clientele, we do not have replacement conversations. We have budgetary conversations. We have all these different approaches that I've learned and paid for through the School of Hard Knocks to make sure that people understand what they're getting into. And I train my project managers, I train my inspectors. I think we're inspecting to be prepared for a flawless, smooth, flowing production process. And generally we're hitting it. So no one's perfect, but and that's something that I always struggled with, was giving up the reins, giving up control of a customer experience that I poured everything into, that was keeping me up at night when everyone else is in their rooms, in their homes, cuddled up inside their offices. I'm out in the shit dealing with rain, wind, snow, lightning, ice, leaks, because I'm not a good gutter guy. I was learning gutters on the spot, and then subsequently also learning roofs through the School of Hard Knocks, and always standing next to my workmanship, because I knew, Mike Rowe, who was the inspiration for it all, the dirty jobs, blue collar, someone's got to do it, right? And then having listened to all these beautiful podcasts through Tim Ferriss's network, Joe Rogan's guests, getting exposure through Jocko and all the other people that I was trying to learn from and model after, that it's okay to go through the shit, because what you become on the other side is where the value's at. It's not the destination, it's enjoying the journey of learning and going through fucking hell, where you become who you are meant to be, who you learn who you really are, who is the leader that other people need so that they can be bettered, because you give them space to make mistakes, because you know that's what's necessary to get where you want to go. You learn, you get better every single fucking day, right? And so now, having that beautiful hindsight, feast and famine, failure, win and loss, and a lot more wins because of it, but really not having as many people as I wish I could have shared it with, that kind of hurts. Along the way, you decide you're going down a path. Not everyone wants to come with you. Not everyone's meant to go with you. Not everyone believes you can even do it. And those people that don't believe, you have to let go, right? And so your circle becomes smaller, because only you have the dream. And at a certain point in the industries that I was in, sometimes the jobs, you can't get the job done. No one's better suited to do the job than yourself, right? I remember the days of the summers where I got a heat stroke, and that's what I felt like let me bear through the heat stroke of what it was like to cook on the oven in 90-degree ambient temperatures in front of a 900-degree oven, who's got a line of people in front of a August fair to make it through and persevere. I remember one of the gutter jobs coming down from Vancouver. It wasn't even that hard, but I'd been hit the day before, and going into a 2-day job, I was coming back, finishing up. I was like, oh, that wasn't that bad. But then I was slurring my speech, foaming at the mouth, and going cross-eyed. I was like, somehow I'm fucked up, And keep in mind, I'm thinking about like, shit, if I really love my family, then I'm going through this for better or for worse. And then being on the oven, I'm looking at the team, and the team, no one's able to craft the type of pizza. When you're trying to balance on the floor, I could fit 8 different pies. By the time you get the first one in, the last one goes in. You're spinning the first one, and you're doing your song and your dance on the floor, and you got to get them out. You got to get, that one's burnt. You got to remake a call for. You got to take a 50 on the door. People are waiting. You're calling for them. They don't understand. They're yelling at you. 45-minute wait times. It's getting crazy, but you're thinking. You're not thinking. You're flowing. And that essence, that energy, really was something I was tuning into, was the fact of that this is my journey. This is my story. And then Alex Hormozi would give you permission down the road. You'd find him and he'd say, this is what hard feels like. This is what hard feels like, right? And so then I had permission to feel like shit. I've had permission to say, this is what it's going to take to get where I want to go. And the hardest part of it all was, I'm not money focused. I've never been financially educated. I was always in hard science, and I was like expecting to get a $40,000 a year after graduating, and I was living the guide lifestyle where I would have made 20 for the year, right? And like then having gone to pursue and chase something that was unknown, which is the world that would eventually become smaller and smaller the more I've grown. It's still huge. There still is so much opportunity. There's still so much good in it, but there's so much that you have to filter out, right? And so then through the process, I've learned to curate my own filter for the information that I feel like is important, that I feel like other people should know, that I want my team to focus on, that I want my customers to realize, that people that, and you know, through this whole thing, the biggest adversary through it all is yourself, but is actually my fucking dad, who through his own style of love was challenging me to see if I had what it takes. And there was many times where I would be saying, I'm gonna throw in the fucking towel, you know, but you wake up refreshed. When you focus on your body, you focus on your mind, you give yourself space and forgiveness to say it's okay to be fucking tired, to want to give up, you know. But when you think about all you've done through the years to get through it, you don't want to waste that, right? You look back to your coach, you remember everyone else that you're listening to, and you know, in Tim Ferriss's podcast, like his guests talking about their stories and trials and tribulations, I'm identifying with their stories because I'm going through it at the time. And you know, I'm looking at my friends and they're creating families and they're buying houses and they're upgrading their lives, and you're like, you're downgrading, you're going through this shit, and you're like, well, why don't I have all the niceties? You know, I'm working so fucking hard. Like, where is my vacation, this and that? So I did treat myself to one thing, which was at the end of the year, I would go on surf trips. And if I was going to embody the definition of flow, which for me was more of a connection with energy than anything, which was, I wanted to define my own version of success and like read through all of the definitions of any standardized socioeconomic term. What does my mind of success look like? What is my definition of success? What is flow to me? It's a noun, it's a verb, it's an adjective, it's a way of life, it's a filter that gives me the ability, the mindset around creating, determination, energy. Energy is all around us, which means flow is all around us. And that's ultimately where the name Flow Roofing came from, is because I found that there was a connection between the fluid dynamics of how air was flowing through an attic space, the building code, and surfing, which is this insanely beautiful, smooth connection of energy flow transferring between this unseen, then soon to erupt, crashing, powerful ass, beautiful wave, and then you being a part of the universe's gift to feel what it's like to flow, to be a part of the energy. Oh my gosh. So I will surf until my arms fall off, and this is one of the things, the reasons why I continue to pursue a masterful connection with the bodies, to always stay balanced, not only to make sure I don't fall off a fucking roof, which is actually how the founder of ABC Roofing, now the most powerful, richest woman in the world, is the founder's wife, ex-wife, widow of ABC Roofing. It's so incredibly potent. It's the reason that I feel like, you know, all those hours, I can't even quantify the hours of staring into the fire, looking into the oven, dreaming of what those pizzas meant to me. And that's, I believe that there's anything, the reason why those pizzas tasted okay was that I was baking in the love of what I felt I wanted people to feel so that I could become the best version of myself. If I didn't leave it all on the court, so to speak, then I wasn't living my truest potential. I wasn't living my fullest life. And I wanted to look back and not have any regrets, for better or worse, for relationships that have come and gone, for a vision of a future that had opportunity. Those fucking pizzas would be the best fucking pizzas I could ever create. And through it all, to the point now where how I do individual roofs, every fucking nail counts. Every shingle counts every single day. And I take this same approach with how I train my project managers, my inspectors, my crews, all of our support staff, and even educate my clients, and teaching the team how to transfer that belief to their own interactions with the public and private sector, actually. It seems to be flowing in a positive direction. It's so wild to reflect on all of that just happened, and then to now look at what the future has in store. It is a blessing we're endlessly thankful for. But I'll tell you right now, those guests on Tim Ferriss' podcast, Jocko, everyone else, like, it's not done. There's so much more to do. There's so much more to get better on. We've got our first major projects coming down the pipeline that require an orchestration so flawless that the universe will tell us no more if we fail, which means flows lights out. Okay, I fucking love that game though. Okay, so the 4 race that we had down in Stanford for nationals, that was a test, and all these other things have been these tests that I've been continuously pushing myself to make sure that we always have a positive outcome from. And even if there wasn't success, that the failures left such amazing lessons that we could get better exponentially, to the point where now in the last 24 months, I know that I'm paying for education from consultants, from mentors, from people that can help instill the knowledge I need to know so that we can play on those levels. Okay. And I know now better than ever that, and to the point now we have one more coming up this year, that if we want to play at the highest level, we need this extra bit of training, to the point where I know that there's no stone left unturned, so that when we sit at the table here in a week or two with the other engineers, and when we have our conversations with our GCs, our property owners, our board members, the other investors sitting at the other side of the table or on the other side of the screen, that when we're having these conversations, 1, they know who we are. 2, they know that we're not money driven. 3, that we know we have the experience necessary to get the job done well, efficiently, on time, on budget. And that they understand, those individuals, that we're going to stand by our work for the long haul. And that's what this building represents, is posting up, as we do in basketball, sitting on the block, boxing in, and getting the fucking ball, getting after it, right? And so we pull that ball down for the rebounds. My favorite part is you get the rebound, and guys are running down the court. I'll take the ball. I'm going to take the ball up court. What the fuck's a 6'3" post doing taking the ball up court? It's okay. I got it. Right? I still love taking the ball up court, even though I don't deserve it. I'm not the most well coordinated anymore. That way we can make the shot, the call for whether to pass, shoot, dribble, fake. It all plays in, and that's probably the best part of business that I love, is the ability to make plays, to build a team, to win with others, and to do it with style in a way where no one can really duplicate the origin story because there's only one. And, to be the best I can possibly be for the team, for the fam, for the brand, so that in another 5 or 10 years I can look back and know we fucking left it all on the court. And so, with that, highly doubt anyone's made it through this far, but I want to be able to be a source for education for others that want to do something similar. I want to be an asset to this industry that's given me so much, the ability for me to learn and grow, to help develop the team, to build others, to create lives around me that allows others to thrive, both as a client in the client experience side of things and the team side of things. And I'll tell you right now, this is a whole lot of me, my, and I, and we, me. Everything that you guys just heard when I started jumping into roofs, the only reason I'm successful by any societal measures is because of my sister. And when I brought her on as office manager, she shipped my shape up so well because she had kids to feed. She had a family, and that changed my motivation for why we were going to try to build something great, because she had mouths to feed and I couldn't let her down. I have never, so you go through these years and people, they don't want a workaholic significant other. They don't want a roofer. They don't want a pizza guy as their significant other. But I'll tell you, the characteristics I've learned along the way, I've developed something that is super priceless. And my appreciation for the family unit foundation and seeing my sister and her growth through roofing, and now bringing on others that have other family members. I think we're now going to be at a payroll of over 20 people. And it's humbling, and it makes me want to work that much harder, knowing that the universe is sending good people our way that have great morals and decision making, better risk adversity tolerance, foresight than myself, better education, better backgrounds, better experience, with as equal fire in the belly for the hunger of success. It's insane. And so, thank you to fucking Tim Ferriss, to Jocko, to all of Joe's guests, to Mike Rowe with Dirty Jobs. You didn't directly benefit us, but you definitely pushed me in the right direction, I feel like. Patrick Chappelle, Devin Quick, all my buddies from high school, golf buddies. Joe just hooked me up with a thermal drone. That's going to change the game. Dave, even though I don't know where you're at anymore, man, I hope you're doing well. This journey is far from over, but I feel like we're on track to be heading in the right direction to where we can continue to give people the best possible experiences, to protect assets with the best possible roofs from top down and the inside out. So this is how we flow. I don't know where you guys are at. I hope you're all doing well out there. I hope you're thriving. I hope you're pushing yourself to get better every day. I hope you don't settle. Hope you put good things in your body, treat your body well, right? We're going to go ahead and sign off here. And I have a couple other videos I want to record. The origin story video, this one, it's done. I'm not going to be able to record it much better in the way that I know I covered all the details, the basis for the fine print. We got project manager training. I've got more new hire training, onboarding picture videos to record. I got a big spec training one I want to go over here as well. It's almost noon. I got to go get leg day in. I'm going to really fucking kill the hams today. and then come back, make sure Garrett's good to go, get him on some spec training as well for a specific project he's going to be taking over. And we're going to clear the shop. We're getting ready to have a grand opening. We've got some big announcements coming down the pipeline. I really don't care anyone competition sees any of these videos at this point. Like, you guys are off on doing your own thing, right? And if there's any way that you get benefit from this, then cool. Welcome to the club. We've got some building to do. We've got some insane purchases that the universe is saying yes to in order to be able to fulfill on the projects that we're going to be up against, and honored enough to be a part of here in 2025. And excited to share more of the journey with you guys. I was always, back to the beginning, I was always not sure if I was going to be having these videos come out before or after the 10 mil. And the 10 mil was an ego thing. We'll probably barely make it to 5 this year. And that's with really pushing to be very efficient, flowing smoothly so we can flow fast. And that's fine. Like, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, okay? Like, what you take home, what you keep, that's what I'm allowed to build with. That's how I can provide a better customer experience and pass value down. Like, my sister, she loves all this small stuff. I get the surfboard. It's like, that's what I care about. I just want to be able to go surfing at the end of the year and eventually take others with me. So we've got some incredible projects coming down the pipe. I might be hiring my first media person this year, where I'm going to be able to go and have some help editing some shots that I feel like I enjoy taking. I want to be out in the field more than I'm in the office this year, because the relationships out there are so much more valuable than anything else. And so key positions that we're hiring for, we've got a full-time estimator coming on board. We've got another commercial project manager coming on board. We've got a fresh set of eyes on the residential inspection set of things. We've got a new commercial concierge who's going to be jumping in. We're going to, then the next one that comes, we've got 2 more service techs we're hiring for, both metal and membrane. And then we've got, we're onboarding another asphalt team, and then we'll be looking at another production assistant. So this all coming down the pipeline in the next 30 days, on top of 4 more trucks, 8 to 10 more trailers, shopping for teleboom handlers. Like, we're gearing up. This is time, do or die. And if we don't gear up, I mean, I could rent a teleboom handler, but I feel like I want to own it, right? Like, the ROI of just being able to have the use for whenever you want it. You're gonna have to pay the transport fee, right? But like, having the capacity is super important to me. Ongoing training, right? Me and Nick will fly down to California in June for that detail. All the bigger projects are popping off. Got a GC who wants us to fly out to Spokane. They're considering the Boise project. They got their portfolio they're growing. Another bigger client too that we dropped the ball on because we didn't clean up properly enough, who's giving us a second chance. We're going to gear up and make sure we go off 6-star experience on that detail. So fucking much, right? I'm excited to share it with you guys. This year is going to be absolutely bananas. Bigger projects than ever, more moving parts than ever, more exposure than ever. Like, let's go. It's game on, right? We're in the fucking 4th quarter right here, even though it's peak season, 4th quarter. It's constantly, every shot, buzzer beaters. They all matter. To the point where we'll come through, everyone will be able to come to the shop, ask questions, see what the showroom's looking like, take a look at the facility. And I want to do free hot dogs for 4th of July. 3rd of July for sure, because I might go surfing for 4th of July. We'll see if we get tickets to the rodeo or not. But yeah, let's go. As they say, let her buck at the Buckaroo. Or is that St. Paul? I don't know. Either way, let her buck. It's time. It's going to be a wild ride. We're going to show with you guys what it's like to flow, so we can go fast or slow, so that we can know what it's like to go with the flow. Stand by.